Okay, excellent. Well, welcome everyone to another ERA live session. It's nice to see so many of you joining us today. Today's topic is a look at our industry through the eyes of academia. What are university students being taught? So today we'll be discussing what university students are being taught about our industry, as well as things like ways you can get more exposure to university students for recruitment and hiring. What are things that Gen Z is looking for to drive job satisfaction? And we will also be touching on what the next generation of students are being taught regarding uses of AI. Walter Tobin, ERA CEO, will introduce today's special guest speaker. But before we get started, I would like to remind everyone in the audience, please remember to mute your devices. And if you would like to ask a question, please utilize either the chat box or the raised hand function. With that, Walter, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Erin. I am really honored to welcome Alex Gabbi to this ERA live session. Alex is presently the Assistant Professor of Business, Government, and Society Marketing at the University of Texas at Austin in the McCombs School of Business. Alex is a dear friend, but let me give you a little background on him. During his 25-plus year career, Alex has planned, funded, and successfully launched 5 startups in the consulting, enterprise software, hardware, and consumer product spaces. In addition, over the course of 10 years, he served in various sales leadership capacities at Arrow Electronics, during which time he played key roles in various corporate transformation projects. In all of his companies, Alex was known for recruiting and leading sales and marketing organizations that were recognized for best-in-class performance spanning multiple years. He has provided marketing consulting services to a wide variety of industries, including electronics, consumer products, and medical technology. Alex is also a published author in The Journey in November 2014, is an avid world traveler, proud father of 3. He lives in Austin, and he has a BBA in International Business and Finance and an MBA in Information Technology and Management, all from the University of Texas at Austin, as you can tell by his background and the great colors. Without further ado, I want to welcome Alex to our ERA Live. Alex, welcome. Thanks for being part of our ERA
Thanks,
Live.
Walter, and hello, everyone. Welcome. I think I know a lot of you, but for those of you that don't know, nice to meet you.
So, Alex, let's get right into it. You're there in the hub of academia. What are the students today? Your students or the students at UT or just in your travels? What do they know about technology?
Yeah, so let me say I'll speak to the best of my ability without being too biased against just the University of Texas, right? And try and kind of include references to other institutions. But my main point of reference is UT, and that's where I've been teaching for the last 17 years. I guess, to answer that question, I would say, students are no different than the general population, in my opinion, when it comes to technology. So at the very highest level. So, there's just like in the general population, the average person is at best a consumer of technology. Maybe they have a basic understanding of the tools they need to do their job. And then you've got sort of the extremes. So the worst offenders are people that are terrified of technology, stick their head in the sand and don't want to learn anything about it. And then you've got the people that are technology enthusiasts that sort of dig in and really embrace it and want to know everything there is about it. So just like we see that outside of universities, that's exactly what we see within universities. So I would say, there's a top 20% of my students that are very interested in technology and will proactively learn everything there is to know about it. There's a bottom 20% that are terrified by it and don't want to do anything with it. And then there's a sort of middle 60% that know enough about it to get their schoolwork done and not a lot more. I guess the big thing to me between college campuses and what goes on in the outside world beyond college is that in college, the technology exposure that students are getting happens automatically. So they don't have a choice. They get some exposure in the classroom because we have expectations as professors about them being able to use basic tools, right, to get their work done. Whereas once you sort of graduate college and get out into the business world, sort of the impetus shifts to the individual, and they have to actively seek out that knowledge as opposed to sort of being spoon-fed it in a classroom setting. So a lengthy answer, but hopefully, one that's good for setting context.
So I failed to mention, if you have any questions of Alex, put them in the chat room. Aaron and Clay will be monitoring the chat room. We ask you not to turn the mic on unless you're called on, but we will try to get to all your questions. So Alex, we all live in the world of electronic components. What did the students know about electronic components?
That's a quick answer. Absolutely nothing. And I think that answer also honestly reflects society as a whole. So like before I got into electronic components, I didn't really know they existed. And I think it's just gotten more accentuated. So the students that I see are basically, they're application driven. Like they don't really care at all about what's in the devices or products that they use. They just care that they work. And I guess I would argue again, that is, if we went out and started polling college graduates or non-college graduates, the general population, we'd probably get a similar feel, right? People don't care what's in their phone or in their computer or in their television or in their microwave. They just care that their microwave heats food and their dishwasher cleans dishes and their phone answers calls. And so they don't know anything is the short answer. And frankly, it's a little bit more concerning in the sense that not only do they not know, they really don't care for the most part about what enabling technology is and why it's important. So that's sort of the state of affairs. As we get into having recruiting conversations, it sort of behooves us as folks trying to recruit people into the electronic component industry to make that connection and make it sound exciting in a way that students can relate to.
So what can we do to that point, Alex? What can we do to try to break through that barrier, if you will, at the universities throughout North America? What would your advice be? Is because we're trying to recruit, we're trying to attract people, recruit them, train them, onboard them, keep them. What can we do to at least, sort of show them the shiny white object, or the shiny object about electronic components?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a two-part answer. So it's like the first question is, how do we make the object shiny? And then the second question is a much more specific question about how do the folks on this call get exposure to universities so that the object that they've made shiny gets seen and they have an opportunity to recruit the students. So I would say focusing more on the first question, how do you make the object shiny? I would say try and position the industry as something that the students care about. So I'll give you a great example of this. Right now, for many students, the word sales is a bad word, right? And it's because for most students, unless they have parents that are in the profession of selling, their only exposure to selling is B2C sales, which is far less interesting and far less dynamic and strategic than the types of sales that we engage in our industry. They see, when they hear sales, they're thinking about the person at Best Buy trying to sell them a television, or the person at the car lot trying to sell them a car. They're not, or the person at, a fashion store. They're not thinking about somebody that's, basically engaging in complex activity with a customer to help them achieve an objective, right? So I think one thing that we can do to help make the object shiny is start by making sales shiny. And I think the way to do that is to stop using the term sales. So I'll give you an example of this. Students, I would say at the University of Texas, at least at the McCombs School of Business, they're very interested in jobs in consulting. right? That is definitely a focus area. They try and go get jobs at Deloitte, at the Bains, at the major consulting firms. But I would argue that a lot of, at least what I experienced in sales in electronics, was very much consulting. It was about learning about the customer and pulling together resources to help create solutions. So I think if we can start throwing terms around like consulting to describe what we do, that becomes a much more palatable, interesting job description than sales. And I think that's an easier thing to achieve than to try and re-educate students on what B2B sales is and how it's different. So, so that's one thing that you can do to make the object itself shiny. The other thing that I think is helping a lot right now is the attention that a lot of AI applications are getting, because in a lot of ways, AI is an enabling technology, but it does lots of cool things. So I think it's opening students' eyes to the fact that enabling technologies can be pretty cool too. It's not just the end product that is cool. So I think we can also piggyback on some of that to sort of say, hey, making things possible for others is actually a cool thing too. And by the way, that's what consultants do. So I think reframing the conversation from, hey, you want to sell connectors, to you want to be a consultant in an arena that is an enabling arena that helps other companies really build cool things, might make the object a little shinier. And we just have to remember that we're starting from a position where students aren't exposed to B2B really much at all, certainly before college and even while within college, to be honest.
So do you, in your experience, do the schools spend any time talking about the world of B2B and what that means or should mean to them as an opportunity when they graduate?
And Walt, this is where I really need to sort of plead ignorance on the engineering side of the house, because I don't have a whole lot of exposure to the School of Engineering. I can speak to you from a position of knowledge with business students. And I would say that most business programs that I'm familiar with in their core curriculum do not really spend a whole lot of time on B2B. So I'll give you a great example. The core marketing class that I teach spends one class session on B2B marketing specifically. Other than that, it's just generalized marketing. Now, I will say that people that I also teach classes like a global value chains class, which is a supply chain class, where we almost exclusively spend time talking about B2B, but that's an elective. So for most majors, students are generally speaking having to opt into specific electives that focus on different areas of B2B versus being exposed to it in a significant way within their core curriculum, so to speak. So I think that's definitely an issue. And whenever you're ready, I realize for the audience, I totally am aware of the fact that I never answered the second part of Walt's question about, once you make the object shiny, how do you get more exposure? So we can definitely come back to that whenever you're ready, Walt. But
no, you can take it now if you want.
Okay, sure. So I guess the answer to that question is very much of an it depends. So, and what it depends on is how many resources and budget dollars you have at your disposal, right? So, and I realize that there might be some folks on this call that have a more significant recruiting budget and resource allocation towards recruiting than others. So let me just kind of start at the top and work my way down. So if you have, a pretty good budget associated with recruiting talent, then I kind of would group you as a tier 1 campus recruiter, for lack of a better description. And the best way for tier 1 campus recruiters to get involved is to literally be involved as program sponsors. So let me give you some examples of that. So we have a marketing fellows program at the University of Texas, both at an undergraduate and at a graduate level. And so, that program has corporate sponsors that get their unfair share of visibility with people that are part of the fellows program. So there's different programs like that companies can get involved in on a sponsored level. We have a Center for Global Business, we have a Supply Chain Institute, so those kinds of things. The other way that you can get involved from a sponsorship perspective is by sponsoring minors, right? So for example, we have a professional sales minor, which we can talk more about later at the University of Texas, but there are corporate program sponsors of that professional sales minor, and they get an unfair advantage and unfair exposure to students that are participating in that minor when it comes to recruiting. So that's what I would sort of objectively say is the tier one level. Tier two, I would say, is you've got some budget for recruiting, but it's not really a lot of budget, certainly not enough money to throw around for sponsorships or anything like that. And really kind of the sweet spot for that would be almost all of the institutions that I'm familiar with have some version of a career services office. And the career services office responsibility for a campus is to connect graduating students with prospective recruiters, right? And so when you're affiliated with the career services office, you get special access to special job boards, and basically you get to use the recruiting facilities on our campus, interview rooms, signups, access to student resumes, to our resume database, et cetera, to give you exposure and an ability to sort of systematically recruit students and then use our facilities to interview them. So I would say that's kind of the middle tier. And then tier three is, hey, we've got resources, but really no dollars to spend on this at all, right? We want to just kind of, it's a guerrilla marketing or guerrilla recruiting approach. And the good news is there's lots of things that you can do with that, right? So every institution, again, that I'm familiar with has like job boards. So we have something at the McCombs School of Business called Recruit McCombs. That's open to everyone. You sign up, your company gets vetted very quickly, and it gives you the ability to post jobs on that job board that students can, apply for. And then basically you're on your own, right? You're doing your own interview process. You're doing, you're using your own facilities to do the interview and so on. So there's job boards. But then there's also just a lot of sneakier ways that you can get on campus, right? So you can guest speak. I have guest speakers, for example, from industry all the time in my class. Many of you, I think most of you probably know Michael Knight. Michael Knight is a regular. Every semester he comes to speak to 3 to 4 of my classes, and it's a great opportunity for him and his company to get exposure to the student talent. So guest speaking is great. There are career days on campus that you can participate in. There are 2 very well-known national professional business fraternities, Delta Sigma Pi and Alpha Kappa Psi, that have chapters at almost all of the major universities. So they're always looking for people to come speak or to host events. So reaching out to the they always have a head of recruiting. So reaching out to the recruitment person that owns each of the chapters in the universities and the communities that you're in would be a great way to get in to see students. And the nice thing about those students, I was the chapter advisor for Delta Sigma Pi for about 10 years. I actually just relinquished my position, but they're hard to get into. So you're automatically starting with like attention from the top students. So there's the point being that at whatever level you're playing at, there are significant opportunities for you to access into the talent population that exists on the campuses. And everything that I'm saying that's related to business schools, 100% also exists for colleges of engineering, and 100% exists for industrial distribution programs across the country. So all of those things I say are very, very transferable across a lot of different campuses.
A lot of our members, Alex, are trying to, restock the pond and going out to the different schools. And some of them are finding that they need to become part of this handshake network.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. And there's a cost to do that. And, what advice could you give, to the average rep in Illinois or Boston or Florida that is trying to get into the universities? Would it be join handshake or just try to find out the career days and try to
Yeah.
get some attention.
Yeah. And again, I would say back to what I said earlier, it depends on, what budget and how much time you have, but a handshake. So our career services office does not use handshake, but that would be a traditional, like my son goes to Syracuse University in upstate New York, and they do use handshake at both the PR and in the business program there. And so that would be handshake to me falls into that tier 2. You're interacting with career services. It's costing you a little bit of money. So again, if you have budget, that's a fabulous way. You're going to have the maximum deal flow there because your job postings will have maximum reach and visibility. And Handshake is the most widely distributed sort of platform at colleges that I've seen. My daughter is also in the business school at Chapman University in Los Angeles, and they also use Handshake. So that's very widely distributed. But like I said, if you're like a lot of the reps I've interacted with over the course of my career, your budget for recruiting is zero. You don't have money to spend. And so I would really focus in on some of the other things that I was talking about. So for the colleges that make sense to you, that are, I would say, regionally overlapped to where you are, figure out who, where the Alpha Kappa Psi and the DSP Delta Sigma Pi chapters are. Usually they have generic email addresses. So it's like for Delta Sigma Pi, I know it's like DSP-president at the chapter name. So you can pretty much find who the current executive officers are and reach out and offer up and say, hey, we have this expertise. We'd love to get exposure to your fraternity brothers and see, we can offer guest speakers, et cetera, jobs, internships. That'll get their attention. Figure out what the job boards are that are free and get on those. And then see if you have reach out to professors that are teaching classes in majors that you think may have students. So like, for example, if you were looking me up on campus, you're like, oh, this dude, Alex, he teaches global value chains, right? And he teaches a class on entrepreneurial marketing. So he might have students that I'm interested in. Let me reach out to him and say, hey, would you be interested in distributing this job announcement to your student? Or would you be interested in having me come in and give a guest lecture on B2B sales, right? And, that I think is, if you have zero budget, those would be the ideas that I would tell you to lead with. And teachers, by the way, are a wonderful resource, because if you start to develop relationships with teachers, I have employers come to me all the time that will not have access to sort of a lot of these other options. And I'll say, hey, I'm looking for a data analytics or a marketing intern. Who do you got? And I'll basically cherry pick my best 2 or 3 students that I know are still looking and offer them up and talk to them, right? One thing I will tell you that I think is also important is about exposure is you have to play ball on the university's timeline, not yours. So just understand that if you want access to the best students, let's say for a position that's opening up in May or June, you need to be recruiting in the fall, at the very latest January, February. Otherwise, the best students are gone. They've already got job offers. A lot of them will already be gone because they'll have return offers from their internship, but you can still find some, and you'll also find those that rejected their return offers because they didn't like their internship. But really the take home there is there is no such thing as starting too early to kind of build a pipeline and then just keep the engagement going so that the pipeline's always active.
That advice is really timely. We just kicked off our internship program for 2024. So we've got reps actively recruiting for interns for the summer of 2024. Aaron, do we have any questions that you want to ask people to open up their mic and ask the question?
Yes, Steve Cholas has a question. Steve, I know you've got 2 up there. I guess pick the one you really want to have an answer most.
Oh, I think they kind of Alex, nice to see you again, by the way.
Yeah, good to see you, Steve.
I think they kind of dovetail off each other, relative to the pay scale. I mean, it's kind of the ugly gorilla in the room. So relative to your students' interest in technology, is there any way at all for this industry, be it rep, even at the DISD or component manufacturer level, to compete with the pay scale that's coming out, especially in the software companies for business students? And is there a propensity for the students you see, if they go into tech from a business standpoint, are they leaning towards software versus hardware type businesses?
Yeah, so both of those are great questions, and I'll lead with the bad news. The bad news is you have no hope of competing from a compensation perspective. That's the bad news. Oracle, who I'm most familiar with, is leading out starting positions sort of 130 plus guaranteed. So now I think part of what I'm saying is nothing new. Like, I think our industry, because of our margins, has always been at a massive disadvantage from a compensation perspective when competing against software companies that have 7 to 10x our margins at least, right? So we've always been competing at a disadvantage. And so the answer is, you're probably not going to be able to compete compensation-wise with software companies that are recruiting, and you're most definitely not going to be able to compete compensation-wise with the big consulting firms that are recruiting. That's the bad news. Here's the good news, and this dovetails into something that, well, Walt and I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about, which was the good news is that the current generation of students, unlike prior generations, all prior generations, frankly, if you look at the rank of the things they care about in a job, financial compensation is 6th on the list. So that's the good news. The good news is that money isn't only exclusively where it's at for the people coming out of school. And I have a good friend that's a senior director at Microsoft that has done a lot of research in this area as well. So I asked him to share the most recent rankings that they had found. And so I can dump these into the chat too, but so the top 5 that lead before financial stability, which was number 6. Number 1 was career development opportunities. Number 2 was work-life balance, including remote work, flexible hours, and generous time off. Number 3 was purpose and meaning. Number 4 was inclusive and diverse workplaces. And number 5 was access to cool technology tools. So the good news is, I very much believe that everybody on this call has a really good chance to develop a competitive portfolio of offerings in those top 5 categories that, for some students, not for all, because there will always be people that are driven by finance, but for a good chunk of Generation Z students, could be compelling, right? And offset some of the compensation differential that we're just sort of penalized by. So it's not all bad news, but I would be absolutely lying to you if I said I thought you could compete from a compensation perspective. What I would say is, don't even try. Do the best you can for compensation, and then compete like heck on those first 5 and win that battle.
Thanks. So Alex, my next question is, I know that the University of Texas has a very robust, academic following. What are some of the schools that some of us out here in the world should focus on? Are there schools that have industrial distribution programs? And what is your recommendation about where we should go hunt?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, but before I do that, I kind of, Rick, I think I beat you to your chat comment. So I put the top list that I was referring to in the chat, so you guys can just snag that and take a look at it in terms of what Gen Z is looking for. So I'll full disclosure here. What I did is I basically said, okay, let me start at the top. So the first obvious place is any school with a strong business program or engineering program, especially EE or ME, you should look at, right? So any schools in your region that you're able to access that have, like, for example, if you're in our traditional rep 4-state region in Texas, like you'd be crazy not to be talking to UT, right? To the school that I teach at. So any school with strong business programs, strong engineering programs, absolutely. Then obviously I would also say any schools that offer industrial distribution, right? So there's strong industrial distribution programs. And I will say, full disclosure, I went on a few of my favorite AI tools and said, tell me what the schools are that have quality industrial distribution programs are, and I just dumped that in the chat. So those are schools that I tried to kind of pick a smattering across the country so we could get a list of programs that appeal to everyone. So these are schools that have documented industrial distribution programs. I personally think those programs are valuable, but I definitely would not say only focus on that. There are plenty of students getting business degrees and or engineering degrees, or quite frankly, other degrees that I think would be extremely capable salespeople. One of the best students that I ever had that ended up going into sales was her major was biology, and she minored in business. And actually, ironically, I think, if I remember right, Michael Knight was a biology major. I'm almost positive. So I think you're looking for attributes. And then the other thing I would say is many business schools are starting to roll out professional sales minors because they've been approached by the companies that recruit with them and been told, look, there's a shortage. We need more salespeople. We can't find people to do sales. And so they've developed minors. And the nice thing about the way the minors roll out is most of the institutions that I'll copy and paste these in the chat as well, that I've looked at, not only do they not restrict participation in the minor to business school students, they actually very actively open it to others. So it allows you to cast a larger net within a campus if you start looking at professional sales minors, because now you're not just looking at business students, you're looking at people from a wide variety of backgrounds who have a stated self-selected interest in also doing selling. So that's also a great place to look. And a lot of times these professional sales majors and minors, especially minors, are looking for ways to grow their recruiting base and their connections with companies. So I just dumped a list of schools there. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. I tried to pick a list of schools sort of smattered across the country for you to look at, but you can obviously do your own research to kind of see what options there are. But I would definitely pay very close attention to not just industrial distribution, but I think sales minors are a great way to get attention, because you're dealing with a student population that's self-selected and showed you that they're already interested in things.
So Alex, we've got ERAs bringing 650 plus people to your campus in February. How can we sort of get you maybe to guide us or to help us or expose your students to us to your students, talk about electronic? I mean, we're there, we've got reps, distributors, manufacturers, to really maybe as a small start, at least at UT, to talk about the industry that we have, and maybe have your students attend some of the breakout sessions or whatever. What kind of advice can you give us here or ERA to how we can maybe begin that process?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say this is all truth here. So number one, lead with free food. If you want students to come to your event, free food will get them there every time, right? Once you've solved the free food problem, do the event at a time, do something that's at a time that's convenient for them, which is never during the day, right? So 5 o'clock, 5:30, that's the time that meetups happen, guest speakers happen, et cetera, right? So if you want people to attend, give them free food, pick a time that is convenient for them. 5:30 is typically a good time, so is 5. And then spend a lot of time thinking about curating something that is beneficial to them, right? And you know, and again, I'm not teaching anything that you don't know, because this is all selling, right? But it's like, come up with, you know, figure out what's in it. What's in it for the student? Why would they want to attend, right? What are you going to talk about that's interesting, that would give them incentive to attend, make them feel like there's a reason to. And you know, Walter, you and I have talked about this. I'm more than happy to kind of offer advice on what some of those topics could be that might be interesting. I talked a little bit earlier in this conversation about reframing it from sales to, you know, consulting and sales or professional consulting, things like that. And then it would be, you know, once we have something that's interesting, let's roll that out to a good audience. So I'm more than happy to share that with all of my peers and have them promoted in their classroom. I'm happy to talk to the person that runs the professional sales minor, and see if they would distribute it, but also potentially have any ideas or insights. But and then obviously I still have lots of connections at Delta Sigma Pi. Happy to spread the word there. But it's about step one, give them food. Step two, pick a time that works for them. Step three, give them a reason that's worth their while to attend.
Maybe we could partner with Adam Anderson and Jeff May and Aaron and I, and look at, you know, we've got that 5 o'clock time at which the conference ends before we have events, or maybe something around, you know, 5 to 5:30 or 5 to 6 on you know, a Monday or Tuesday night before we do something else, and certainly open it up to the people at the conference and see if they want to attend. But I'd love to partner with you on that, Alex. That would be, I think that would be time and some money well spent.
Sure. You know, and by the way, you know, I mean, obviously you have a huge advantage because the ERA conference is hosted on our campus, so that's right. An easy one. But you know, you could, I would say, that whole concept you could easily clone to a campus near you, right? You don't have to have the ERA conference to pull that off, right? The methodology would be the same, right? Find the people in charge of teaching the sales classes, the sales minor, find the people and take that, whatever you decide the what's in it for them is, you know, if it turns out to be compelling, then just keep replicating it campus to campus, right? On the campuses near you.
So Alex, I'm sorry, Aaron, are there any other questions in the chat room? I see the chat room is lit up here. I don't have access to it. Are there any questions?
There's nothing in there. It's just all the information that Alex has been pasting in there. Thank you, Alex.
So Alex, one of the concerns we have as an industry is we get these younger people in and we hire them, and then we struggle to keep them. You know, what are the things that the sort of the early career people are looking at as far as driving job satisfaction for them?
It's basically the stuff that I put up there, right? So, you know, it's weird to say this because I don't think I'm getting dumber as I get older, but I live this weird life where I keep teaching people that stay a constant age as I continue to get older. And the people at that constant age keep getting smarter and better prepared, is my experience, at least at UT. And so they want to work for companies that have purpose, that have meaning, that align with what they believe in, that prioritize the things they believe in. They want to be able to know they're making a difference. They want to know that they work at a company that values their life outside the company just as much as they do their work within the company. They want challenges and they want leadership that's invested in their progression. And you know, if you are able to deliver that, they will stay. And if you aren't, well, they will join and then they will stay. And if you are not able to deliver that, they will either not join, or if they do join, they won't stay very long. Because the New World Order is very much not a loyalty-driven order. So people stay at jobs as long as they feel like there's a learning curve and they're being rewarded, right? And intrinsically, more than extrinsically with financial rewards. So it's really on the employer to invest in those activities for the people that you want to keep. And I really believe, I'm a firm believer that success in companies in the future is going to be, the war is fought on two fronts. One is going to be how effectively and efficiently to use technology. And the other front is going to be how effectively and efficiently do you attract and retain the right talent. And I think the companies that figure those two things out are going to be the companies that kill it. And the other companies are going to be the companies that are killed. I really believe that. So, so understanding the challenge that we have as employers now is you've got a workforce that spans more generations than any workforce ever before. And each generation has different priorities. And so constructing a culture and environment that creates a place for all generations to thrive is very challenging and complicated.
Mm-hmm. So, Alex, you're at the tip of the spear there in the world of academia. What's sort of the next big thing coming out of the campuses?
I mean, it's the same as the next big thing that you guys read about every single day, which is AI. It's super interesting to me because AI is following the exact same format that I led with on technology in general, which is there's a small percentage of students that have really embraced AI, right? And then there's a small percentage of students, well, actually not small, about a third of the students who are still sticking their head in the sand, and then the majority that are starting to realize it's important. It's an important tool or skill to understand. And I will say that this is an area where academia is actually lagging business. So because in some ways, AI could represent a little bit of an existential threat for us, right? So we're worried about, at every level, not just at colleges, right? We're panicked that students are just going to be able to cheat their way into passing, right? Not learn anything, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot of the initial knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people in academia was we need to find ways to prevent the use of AI on campuses. And sort of I've been a contrarian on that. So like from day one, I pretty much have encouraged students to actively use AI to complete every assignment. And the only thing they need to do for me is cite what prompts they used and how they used the AI. So if they outperform on an assignment, then the rest of the class can learn from the students. And I think the campus is catching up. So we now no longer we're more designing curriculum content to ensure critical thinking occurs. And then we're designing other assignments to help promote the understanding and use of AI. So I think my guess is maybe not with this crop of graduating seniors, but with the next crop 1 year from now, so not 2024 or 2025, you're going to get the vast preponderance of students having very strong fundamental knowledge of AI and how to use generative AI, but a lot of other AI tool sets within the context of the major they're studying for, right? So you're still going to have the top 10 or 20% that are like just diehards. Like I've got multiple students right now that have started AI companies, generative AI companies, right, to deliver services and products, and they're using it to pay their tuition, right? So you're still going to have that fringe top 10 or 20% that are really pushing the envelope with AI. But I think by 2025's graduating class, you'll end up hiring crops of students that, if they're a finance major, they're going to be very, very well versed in how to apply generative AI and other tools to finance and know how to use that very, very well. And I think that's going to be really, really important because of what I was saying earlier, which is that's the second front of the war, right? Is whoever uses technology tools the most effectively and efficiently is going to win. So I would say, this year, if you could make it a specific interview question to sort of understand what level of AI knowledge they have, that would be important. But my guess is by next year, you won't have to make it an interview question anymore. You'll just be able to have the confidence that they have that expertise.
So we've spent the last 2 years, 2.5 to 3 years, talking about the need of manufacturers' reps to get into digital marketing, to do more digital marketing, to not rely on the manufacturers and all this stuff. And I'm just generalizing. What advice could you give an average rep if they're looking to get into digital marketing, or maybe invest in somebody that use the AI tools? What are your thoughts on which way do you think would be perhaps the most effective or efficient or most cost-effective way to conquer the world?
I would skew much more towards hiring someone that has a basic interest and knowledge of marketing, but is in that top 10 to 20% of AI tool understanding, versus the opposite. Somebody who's an expert at marketing, has had several marketing internships, but has kind of stuck their head in the sand and isn't super familiar with AI tools. And I'll give you a simple example of how this works. So those of you that have met me before, you may also recall that in addition to teaching, I run a nonprofit here in Austin. And I have my own internship program where we employ 3 UT interns on a 12-month basis. So we'll hire people for 12 months. And they're all 3 marketing interns, but they, in fairness, when I hired them, AI wasn't that mainstream of a thing. But I'm AI obsessed. So I've created a custom marketing GPT for the nonprofit that I run, that enables them to be able to virtually instantaneously create social media content, press releases, web content, blog content, just using prompts on our custom Wonders and Worries GPT. And I mean, it's the productivity increase is insane. We're taking hours of work and condensing it to seconds, minutes. So what I would be looking for my next crop of interns, which I start recruiting in January for them to start on July 1, is I want people that can do that. I will happily forego some basic marketing knowledge for people that have enough marketing knowledge to be able to but lots of AI tool knowledge to be able to be dangerous and start to really think about how we automate our digital marketing and non-digital marketing processes as much as possible. So that would be how I would skew. But that's me, and I have my own biases, right, as both a marketing professional and as an instructor.
I know we're going to have 2 sessions at the conference on AI. We had a session last year, and it's amazing what it can do, and yet so many of us are still a little bit afraid of it, frightened of it, not know how to get started, and and yet some of us are trying to hang on to the old tools and make them better. Aaron, do we have any other questions in the chat room? You or Claire?
Yes, there are some questions coming in. Steve, I'll open it up to you again.
I'm trying to remember which that question was. I think here it is again.
It was the face-to-face sales.
Yeah, I was writing notes. So Alex, do you get a sense, or what sense do your students have, and maybe how you talk about it? If you're going to go into sales or marketing, you're going to need some face-to-face skills. You're going to need to spend time in the field versus digital dependency. Can you reflect on a little bit on what their lean is? Do they lean to want to do that? What's that mix look like?
Yeah, it's funny. We just had this exact conversation at one of our department meetings. So I would say first, one of the things that marketing technology, and also in its own way AI, is allowing for is, I would say, moving marketing further down the sales funnel or sales cycle than it's ever been before. And that I think is an important thing, because I think a lot of the younger generations of customers, that's their desire too, right? Is to be able to self-serve and do more things on their own. But to your point, Steve, there's also sort of, at the end of the day, for the moment, people still make the ultimate decision, and psychology and relationships still drive and bias the decisions that we make. So one of the things that we've gotten feedback from our recruiters on is we do an outstanding job of training students for sort of that C-suite presentation, right? To be professional in that kind of context. But what we don't do a good job, and I would suspect this is true of a lot of the universities, what we don't do a good job of is preparing students for that. What honestly happens more often than not in business, which is you sit down in a meeting and it's a bunch of one-on-one interactions versus stand up in front of the board or the C-suite and present. And so a few of us this semester and next semester are experimenting with new assignment formats that are geared towards developing that skill set. Sort of the skill set of how do you run a meeting, how do you, and where the format that is tested really well so far allows people to play multiple roles. So sometimes you'll play the role of the person running the meeting, but sometimes you'll have to prepare for the role of the finance guy in the meeting or the R&D guy in the meeting, right? So it really forces students to think about different roles, and as a result, be much more prepared for that kind of dynamic, which we feel is much more common. I can't say if other schools are doing that, but I suspect that all of us are great at teaching people to stand up and give a presentation, but not necessarily have those one-on-one discussions. And I think that's an important skill set that no matter how far down the funnel marketing takes us, ultimately the buck's going to stop there for the very large strategic deals, right? Definitely not obviously the go order 100 capacitors online deal, but definitely the multi-million-dollar deals.
Well done. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Aaron, any other questions?
Yes, there's a question from Rob. Rob, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just curious, with AI becoming more and more important, and some of us are mid-career, what would be the best apps, videos, or books for us to start absorbing so that we start learning how to use these tools? Any hacks, any places that you would use as reference? I think most of us have probably experimented with ChatGPT, but beyond that, what should we be looking at?
Yeah, so I'll give you the first as the short answer, which is I personally don't believe there are shortcuts, right? So like avoid the, hey, buy the 10,000 prompts for ChatGPT, this, that, and the other. Like, I think that's a shortcut that's not going to teach you the power of the technology. So the big three sort of generative AI tools out there, as you correctly mentioned, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and then the other two, there's a tool by Anthropic called Claude. That's the second big player. And the third big player is a tool by a company called Inflection called Pi. And these are the three largest generative AI models and tools that you can access. So one thing that I would suggest that you do is really spend a lot of time trying to familiarize yourself with at least one, if not two, out of those three tools. They're all good at different things. ChatGPT, as I mentioned, is great because you can make custom GPTs now using your own content. Anthropic is really great at like consuming massive amounts of information and then doing something with it. So you can upload up to 500 pages of content now in Anthropic, in Claude 2.1. So step one would be, I would say, try and pick a couple of those general purpose tools, and in whatever way works for you, whether it's tutorials. I'm an avid YouTube guy, so I'll just get on YouTube, and and I'll find people that are talking about examples of how to use those tools and walking you through it, and then I'll walk through it with them. That's how I built my custom GPT. So that would be bucket one. And then the second thing I would do, and I'm doing this with my nonprofit, I have a board committee working on this, is identify your top 2 or 3 business bottlenecks. Like, what are the things that your business is having issues with, right? And so, like, I'll give you a simple example for my nonprofit. Higher grant throughput was one of them, reducing expenses for our program initiatives, and then basically like increasing programmatic productivity. So improving our triage process so we could see more patients, right? So identify what those top 2 or 3 business bottlenecks or processes are, and then be much more systematic about trying to identify point solutions to solve those problems, right? And that'll give you a great opportunity to not only apply what it is that you're learning about in a context that helps your business, but it'll help you also just flat out solve business problems. So, and then the last piece of advice I'll give you, because I'm cognizant, I can't remember how long this call goes. I think it's an hour. So I'm cognizant that we're bumping up against the hour, once you've done those 2 things, when you deploy AI into your organization, let's say you solve a productivity problem that you were trying to solve for your organization. That's one of the top 3 things you decided to solve. You looked at it, you decided that Claude was the tool, or some specific tool out there. There's lots of other tools, like for all kinds of stuff, right, out there. When you deploy the tool, please don't call it AI, because that will freak people out, right? Just call it, hey, we found a really cool way for us to summarize our video calls more efficiently and distribute notes, right? And great, right? That's a lot less intimidating than, we want you to start using this AI tool, right? So that would be my big 3, is familiarize yourself with two of the 3 main generative AI models, pick 2 or 3 big business problems to go solve, and identify solutions to go solve those problems using AI, and then roll them out into your organization without calling them AI. Just call them tools that are going to help make our lives easier.
I like it. So don't call it AI and call it sales consulting. That's my takeaway, is use consulting, not sales. I like that. Alex, we're at the top of the hour, and you are one of our own who's escaped the great world of electronic components and now is in academia. So don't forget us. Don't
I miss
remember
you guys
that
every day.
we're out here with sticks and stones, Alex, trying to make a living.
I miss the industry every day, and I appreciate the time with you guys. I think many of you know where to track me down, so feel free to send me an email at any time. And also, I plan on at least attending some of the ERA conference if my schedule permits. So if you'd like to spend some time together meeting at that point, I'm happy to do that. So,
well, we have a couple 600 people coming to our opening cocktail party at 5 o'clock Sunday night, and certainly you got an invite for that. And then we have Monday night party off-site. We'd love to invite you to that and mingle with our people, and know that you are loved and missed by all of us. So,
well, thank you guys. Hopefully you found a little bit of value in this, and good luck with your recruiting efforts on college campuses. Have a great afternoon.
Good. Thank you. Erin, I'll turn it back to you. Nice job, Alex.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Alex, for joining us today and sharing your insights with us. This session was recorded and will be posted on the ERA website within 24 hours under online tools. You're encouraged to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. Our next ERA live session will be actually next Tuesday, December 5th at 4 p.m. Eastern, where we will be sharing valuable information about the ERA White Pin Internship Program. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone, and have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.